Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
That is the ultimate mystery, isn't it, Calvin? To the Pinkertons and the rest of the world, I am Etta Place. Some folks say I was born around 1878 or 1880, and they like to guess I came from Texas, Utah, or even an aristocratic family in England. But the absolute truth of my birth name, my exact birth date, and where I first drew breath is a secret I took with me. I simply appeared to history when my life intertwined with the Wild Bunch.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
Since no one truly knows where I came from, my childhood home life is a blank page to the public. Some legends try to wrap me up in the story of Ann Bassett, a cattle rancher's daughter from Browns Park, Colorado, who grew up riding wild and fighting cattle barons. Others whisper that I grew up out east or found myself in San Antonio, Texas. Because my origins are so guarded, the world has to skip straight to the woman I became when I hit the frontier trail.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
The name everyone knows me by, Etta, actually started out as Ethel. When Harry Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, and I traveled together, we went as Mr. and Mrs. Harry A. Place. Place wasn't just a random word. It was actually Harry's mother's maiden name. When the Pinkertons started printing their wanted flyers, they wrote my name down as Ethel, but the newspapers and public gossip twisted it over time into Etta. It stuck so well that history forgot the Ethel I used when I signed my name.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
My early school days are unrecorded, but the Pinkertons themselves described me as being remarkably refined, well-spoken, and highly educated. There is a popular story that I worked as a school teacher before I took up with the outlaws. Whether I truly stood in front of a schoolhouse chalkboard or learned my manners elsewhere, I could easily blend into the most respectable, high-class society just as well as I could handle a horse on the open range.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
It was the decision to step through the doors of Madame Fanny Porter's boarding house in San Antonio, Texas, around 1899. At the time, it just seemed like a safe, upscale place to be. But Fanny's parlor was a notorious haven where outlaws came to spend their money and lie low. Walking into that house changed everything, because that is where I first crossed paths with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That single choice set me on a path from a quiet life straight into the wildest chapters of the American West.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement? And what were the consequences?
You might be surprised to hear this, Calvin, but I was never actually locked in a jail cell or officially arrested during my time in the States. My first real interaction with law enforcement was seeing my own face and description on the Pinkerton Detective Agency's wanted circulars. They started tracking me because I was traveling right alongside Harry. They described me as having classic good looks, being an excellent horsewoman, and having a striking appearance. But the only consequence back then was knowing that the law was constantly looking over our shoulders.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It was in February of 1901, right before we abandoned the United States. Harry and I went into DeYoung's photography studio in New York City, dressed in our absolute finest clothes. He bought me a beautiful gold lapel watch from Tiffany's, and we posed for a formal wedding portrait. We looked like wealthy, respectable, high society citizens. When that photograph fell into the hands of the Pinkerton detectives, they replicated it and sent it everywhere. Seeing that elegant portrait turned into an outlaw wanted poster made me realize our faces were burned into history forever.
Did fame make you more dangerous? Or did it simply expose who you already were?
The fame didn't make me dangerous, it just made our world incredibly small. With the Pinkertons distributing our photos and the Union Pacific Railroad funding a relentless hunt, we couldn't just slide under the radar anymore. It forced us to adapt. I wasn't just a passive companion. I could ride as fast as any man and hit a target with a rifle. The pressure of being famous outlaws didn't change my character, but it certainly proved to the world that a woman could hold her own in the middle of a lawless territory.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
Society in the changing times betrayed us first. The open frontier we loved was shrinking rapidly. Modern law enforcement, telegraph lines, and organized detective agencies like the Pinkertons made the old way of life impossible. They tracked our every move, forced us out of our hideouts like the hole in the wall, and eventually chased us right out of the country. Our instincts told us to run to South America to escape it, but society's modern net was always stretching out to catch up with us.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People who think of Wild West outlaws picture dirty campfires and rough living, but I loved a touch of elegance. Even when we were actively running from the law, I insisted on riding a bicycle with Butch Cassidy through the streets just for recreation. Later on, when we lived in the rugged wilderness of Patagonia, Argentina, I managed a beautiful ranch house with absolute poise and grace, proving you can run with a wild bunch and still keep your manners intact.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
Our ultimate adversary was the Pinkerton Detective Agency. They were relentless. Even after Harry, Butch, and I boarded the steamship SS Herminius under assumed names and sailed completely out of the country to Buenos Aires, the Pinkertons didn't give up. They tracked our location down to our ranch in Cholila, Chubut province, and sent Spanish-language wanted posters directly to the Argentine authorities. It was a constant chess match between our wits and their global reach.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
My biggest private battle was dealing with severe illness while trying to maintain a life on the run. The strain of living in remote areas took a heavy toll on my health. In fact, around 1907, the medical situation became so critical that I had to risk leaving South America entirely to travel back to the United States under a false name just to undergo an appendicitis operation in a proper hospital, all while knowing the law was actively hunting us.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
The beauty of my story, Calvin, is that the law never did bring me to justice. I never faced a judge, I never heard a jury deliver a verdict, and I never saw the inside of a prison cell. While I did join the boys on a bank raid in Rio Gallegos to secure funds when things got tight, I chose to step away from the outlaw life before the final trap snapped shut. I returned to the United States around 1907, slipped quietly into the shadows, and completely evaded the legal system.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you, and what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The absolute craziest rumor is that I died in a dramatic, bloody shootout alongside Butch and Sundance in San Vicente, Bolivia, in November of 1908. The newspapers and Hollywood loved the idea of the loyal outlaw queen going down in a hail of bullets with her lovers. But it is pure fiction. I had already left South America and safely returned to America a year or two before that final gunfight ever took place.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
The biggest misconception is that I was just a helpless, eye-batting schoolteacher pulled into a criminal underworld by a charismatic man, an image that storytellers love to paint. In reality, I was an independent, highly capable frontier woman. I chose that life, I chose Harry, and I was fully prepared to ride, shoot, and defend our homestead against anyone who threatened our freedom.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
Despite the wild reputation, what I wanted most at one time was just an ordinary, peaceful domestic life. When we first got to Argentina, we bought a beautiful four-room ranch, purchased cattle, sheep, and horses, and tried our best to settle down as honest, hard-working pioneers. I loved tending to our home, welcoming neighbors, and living a quiet, respectable life under the beautiful South American sky before the past caught up with us.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
That is the final locked door of my history. After I returned to the United States around 1907, the Pinkerton Agency eventually abandoned their search for me, and I vanished completely from the historical record. Some folks claim I died in a domestic dispute in Argentina in 1922. Others say I moved to Denver, and some believe I lived a long, quiet life under a completely different name. Because there is no verified date, location, or cause for my passing, I remain forever a ghost of the Old West.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
It was entirely due to the world changing around us. Harry, Butch, and I weren't defeated by a failure of our own skills or a lack of cleverness. We were simply outpaced by the march of civilization. The wild, untamed spaces where a person could live by their own rules were being fenced in and paved over. We ran as far as Patagonia to find that freedom again. But the modern world is a small place, and it always finds a way to catch up.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I appreciate the chance to clear up a few legends, Calvin. People will always try to fill in the blanks of a mystery with their own wild imaginations, but I prefer leaving them guessing. It's quite something to know that a simple girl who rode with the Wild Bunch managed to outsmart history itself.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod